Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to be going on a little bit of a rant today, so I apologize in advance. This is going to be rambling because I haven't really prepared anything, but I've just been sitting here, and I was like thinking about things, and so I had a few things I wanted to talk about, I guess. It just, I'm very annoyed with certain things I see, right? There are some people other like they're supposed to be the alternative media or in opposition to the regime, I guess, or they position themselves as that way, who are just, in my opinion, like wasting people's time. And it's just a distraction, endless distractions. And so this is not directed at everybody. It's just a general observation, I guess, which is that, in my opinion, the legacy media, the mainstream media, doesn't have the influence it once held. Everybody knows that. Trust in the media is at an all-time low. And so the mainstream media, the legacy media, is no longer ascendant. What is ascendant now is the so-called alternative media or the independent media. And so in many ways, you could say that the alternative media is becoming the mainstream media. Like they're becoming more mainstream. And there are some of these channels that have been allowed to grow to quite a number of subscribers. We're talking in the millions. And so you have to ask yourself, on these platforms that are very tightly controlled, and we all know it, it seems like certain voices are allowed to grow while others are suppressed. And we all know that different rules are applied to different people here. Small channels like mine and somebody, someone that has like 1,000 subscribers or 3,000 subscribers, we've gotten strikes for talking about certain things you're not allowed to question that happened in 2020. Still can't even say it because I already got a strike for it before. But I've noticed there are some channels who are allowed to talk about these things. And not only are they allowed to talk about it, their conversations are promoted. They're allowed to get super chats and monetized and have sponsors, and they have an opinion on everything. And every single day they've got to be talking about what's in the news, and it's very serious. And they're experts on everything, and they're very important, and they want you to know that they're very informed and very smart. And like, you see things now where people are creating brand identities. And so instead of like letting your work speak for itself, now everybody is creating like a brand and they want to be influencers. And some of these people in the so-called alternative and independent media, they have that same mentality of like being an influencer, where to them, they're not doing this because, oh, like I really enjoy doing this hobby and I want to share it with people, or for whatever reason. It's more like maybe that's part of it, but it's like I'm doing this primarily so that I can do well for myself or have a career or whatever. And it's like, well, what are you in opposition to? You've got millions of subscribers, like you're completely monetized, you've got ad deals, sponsors, like a lot of them create coffee companies or they create their own companies, and then they're able to like sell their products through their content, which is, I think, great. And I think it's an awesome and smart idea. But it's like, what are you actually opposing though? Like, what are you in opposition to? Because they'll complain about things like cancel culture, or like they vaguely claim to be censored or oppressed. And it's like, well, you're not censored any more than anybody else using this platform is. In fact, you are given special privileges on this platform. In fact, you are promoted on this platform. In fact, like, it's like you're still monetized. Like, what are you talking about? When there are other people who've been treated so much worse. And so they like to LARP as like oppressed or something, but they're really not. They're doing very well financially. And I would like to see everybody do well. I would like to see everybody be able to succeed, because unlike these individuals, and again, I'm not naming names, and this is not, a broad statement. I'm not saying that this is generally the case. I'm saying there are some people that I've seen this. And what I mean by this is, like, when you look at our side of things, right? Like, it's really, you don't really see, so when you look at our side of things, like, it looks like maybe there's a lot of options or something, but when you take out, like, independent voices like myself and you look at what's left, it's actually a really small group of people, like a small group of outlets or publications that are, guiding the conversation, shall we say, or given access to people, right? Like, to having guests on, like, getting promoted, like, you can tell when someone's been given access. And so I think the closer that you get to these people, and maybe they bring you on to do an interview or something, like, when you get to interact with these people, you realize that, number one, they're operating a business. Number two, it's like, they may not be what they appear to be on camera. You don't know them. You don't know who they are behind the scenes. You don't know what they're like when the cameras aren't rolling. But I think that the internet creates this sort of, like, parasocial thing where people feel like, because they see someone maybe on camera every single day, that they know that person. I can assure you, you do not. And I'm deeply suspicious of people who like feel that they're smart enough and know enough to talk about everything. They've got opinions on geopolitics and on finance and on all these topics that really, it's like, well, you can have a little bit of information. Like, I like to think of myself as, like, somebody who likes to be, like, I like to know everything, a little bit about everything. And I kind of like to be, instead of, like, I have one area of expertise, I kind of like to have a broad range of things I'm knowledgeable on. And I think we all do. But there's a difference from being like, oh, I'm interested in being knowledgeable on something, to acting like you know the truth about everything, or you totally, like, I don't know, it just bothers me, some of the ways that people will speak on something of authority that they don't actually know anything about. And I see this, like, as it relates to the Whitmer case. I've seen people on our side of the aisle, like, talk about it, and they aren't fully educated on it, and it's frustrating. It's like, anyways. But the point is that, so everybody likes to think that they're informed and, like, they know what they're talking about. And it's like, if I know that people that think that they're, very well versed on this case, like the case that I've covered, if I know that they've gotten things wrong, then I'm sure, many of these folks, when they're pontificating on things, they're going to get some things wrong, but they speak, like, with such authority. I find that concerning. Maybe that's just me, though, because I always feel like a wise person knows that they don't know anything. And it's kind of silly to presume that you know more than somebody that's probably spent years in that field, devoted strictly to learning about that. It's arrogance to think that. And I do see a lot of arrogance in some of the alternative media now that has become ascendant, as the legacy media has receded in influence and no one really follows them. You can see that certain people have been allowed to succeed and do well, and you can see that attitude change where they've become arrogant, some of them. And I can tell you, I feel like I have been disrespected by some of these folks, and I'm not going to say who. I may choose to talk about that in the future if I want to, but I am a classy person, and I don't like to do stuff like that. I'm not interested in drama, and my work isn't about me. It's about the work. I don't make myself the focus of it. Like, I don't, but anyways, like, I understand too that we're in a new time and people have, like, the attention spans they have, and that sometimes, you have to use clickbait to get people to, like, in the door to hear your message. That's one thing, but it's a completely other thing. I feel like when they've reached a certain level, you can see how certain people change, or behind the scenes that they're not nice or good people. And I've experienced that. And I want to say, the overwhelming majority of my experience with other creators and other journalists and other filmmakers has been positive, like overwhelmingly positive. There's so many nice people out there who have, reached out to me, who've helped me, who've brought me on, who've platformed me to talk about the case and in my documentary, or the guys. But I feel like these men deserve better than what they're getting from our side, and I think I do too. There is on our side, there are filmmakers, right? And there's not a lot of them. This is the thing on our side of the aisle. And so as a first-time filmmaker, I have one of these people. I made a post a year ago about my documentary asking for advice. I hadn't even put the trailer out at this point. I had one of them reply to me like, oh, I'm interested in seeing your trailer, send it to me. And I DM'd them and sent them a link. It was still unlisted. We hadn't even publicly released the trailer yet, and just put a message like, oh, I've never made a documentary before. I'd love any advice you can offer, or something like that. And I could tell, you can see, like, if someone's read your message and left it on read, like that this person saw my message, they must have watched my trailer and saw what I said after that. They read it and they didn't respond. And, after that, like a year later, released their own film that had very similar themes to mine. So it was like, that could just be a coincidence, but it was also kind of weird. And I've had people repeatedly reach out to me telling me I should contact that person. Oh, reach out to them to talk to, about your documentary and see if they'll get you on. And it's like, you don't understand. They're not interested in having me on. Like, they want to talk about the story, but they want to be the ones talking about it. Like, if they're not the center of it, if it's somebody else, like, they don't care. And so that's frustrating to me when I have people like saying, oh, you should reach out to this person or that person. Well, maybe by this point, maybe I have, and I just don't say anything about it. And like, there's a reason, like, you're not seeing me on those places. Like, they don't want me on. And like, what I mean is, so I have gone on some places to do interviews. Some people have brought me on, which has been amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. But I've seen too that the closer you get to that area or whatever, like these more influential, bigger channels, you realize that the people that are at the top there, it's a small circle of people, and they're all friends with each other. They all know each other, and they create like cliques. And if you don't kiss their butt, they won't let you in. And I'm not one of those people that is willing to degrade myself like that. Like, I'm a humble person, and I'm super grateful and loyal. Anybody that helps me, I never forget it. And if I'm ever in a position to help that person, I will, and then some. That's the kind of person I am. I don't feel a need to do things publicly, though. Like, anyways. So you can see, though, how they create these closed systems, and they look at other people that are, maybe less experienced than them or are just starting out with disdain, and they see them as competition when we're supposed to all be on the same side and everybody should want everybody else to succeed. But that's not the case. They're super hyper competitive, and it's like, if you don't go along with everything that they say, they're not letting you in. And so they gatekeep. They create this closed off ecosystem of they create these cliques where they promote each other, and they have each other on all the time, endlessly, to have conversations. Oh, we're having these interesting conversations. Oh, look, we're going to have conversations, controversial conversations. First of all, a lot of the conversations that these people are having are things many of us have been saying for years and have been, censored and banned for saying. So it's like, okay, it's really nice you've discovered that now. But if you hadn't figured it out by now, I don't know what to tell you. But it's good to see you just discovering this. But they'll create these gatekeeping systems of, if you are lucky enough to like slip through the gates, you're immediately ejected. As soon as they realize you're not going to go along with the agenda or whatever, or that you might actually speak freely or something, or you're not controllable, or you're not a yes man, they immediately eject you, and they don't make that mistake again. And so, yeah, that's what they do. And in that way, they control what information gets to people, but also who becomes, who's allowed on their programs, who isn't, who gets promoted, who does not. There are so many people doing good work that I don't understand why some of these big shows don't have them on as guests. And it's very telling, but they'll have on certain people like over and over again. And like, yes, those people do good work and they're worthy of having their voices heard. But what about the people who are doing great work, but it's only into they're only being able to get their work in front of the eyes of 100 people? Why not help that person get to more people? And so it bothers me when you see these folks that have these massive platforms, they bring on other people who have massive platforms as guests. And it's like, why don't you bring on like some of the folks on Twitter who do good work that a lot of these people steal and then just kind of, like report on or something. But anyways, that's a whole other thing. Lenin said that the best way to control the opposition is to lead it yourself. That is true, not just in terms of the politics side. Like, obviously, they... yeah, that's a thing. We can see it, right? Like, both sides are controlled opposition to make it look like they are against each other, but they're not. Behind the scenes in Washington, D.C., and guys, I live in the Beltway, I know, they're all friends behind the scenes. They have more in common with each other than they do with the rest of the country. They're, the so-called left and right, and politicians in D.C., on camera, they're like, they're giving each other lashings and they're talking tough to each other and then, like hamming it up and stuff. But then when the cameras are off, they're like, huh, that was really good. Like, we made that look real. That spat we just had. Let's go get a drink, at the bar together. That's what they do. And so it's just, yeah, like the best way to control the opposition is to lead it. Well, the best way to control opposition to the system, voices who are dissenting from the system, is to control the alternative media. It is to put your own people out there and give them studios, give them resources and money, because that gives them access. It allows them to bring on these people. And what I mean to say too is, listen, there are people out there who I know for a fact have connections. Like, I know that they've had on politicians on their channel as guests, or, that they know numerous lawyers or something, or maybe they know constitutional scholars or experts or something. Some of these folks have a wide range of like resources, connections and stuff. And it doesn't cost somebody anything to say to someone like Brandon, who's been through what he's been through, you know what, let me see what I can do to help you. Like, let me see if I can make some phone calls or something. I'm going to see what I can do for you. That costs nothing. And some of these folks couldn't even do that. They'll talk about these stories and they'll use them for clout at times. Or they'll use it when they want to grandstand about the FBI, like these politicians do. But they don't ever reach out to these families. They never take action. They're constantly having conversations, but they sabotage the people below them, or they just won't help amplify voices who need to be heard and should be amplified. And everything has to be about them, their brand, their influence, winning. Everything is a game that has to be won. It's a competition, and I don't like that, and I don't see it that way. But it does feel like there are some people who do. Or they just disrespect you. They don't treat you the way you deserve to be treated for the work that you're doing. And they don't want to give you the recognition for it, so they just ignore it. And it's frustrating, because these men deserve better, and the American people deserve better. Their audiences deserve better. And I just, sometimes people need to hear harsh truths in order to be better. Because some of these people, once they achieve a certain level of success and notoriety, they surround themselves with yes men, with people who don't push back on them at all and just feed their ego. And so when they're confronted with somebody who doesn't just constantly validate everything they say and stroke their ego, they get offended, or something, or they don't like you. And it's like, well, I'm not going to play that game to be allowed on to your program or something. Like, I'm not going to stroke your ego, but what I will do is, like, I'll be grateful, and I will help you if you help me like a normal person. um so and it reminded me of King Lear, right? The story of King Lear, how he wanted his daughters to tell them how, profess their love for him in order to get territory, you know, in their inheritance from him. Oh, tell me how much you love me. And oh, Father, you are like the sun in the sky. You're like the moon. You know, my love for you is like the ocean. It is as expansive and deep. It's like, it's fluffery. It's nonsense. Like, I'm not going to do this. And so Lear learned this lesson when his daughter Cordelia said, I love you, as you know, like as is required of a child to honor their parent and love their parent. But she would not lie to him and wouldn't fluff him up and puff him up with flattery in exchange for territory. She was like, no, if you want to give me something, give it to me out of the kindness of your heart. Don't require me to sit here and give you flattery in exchange for it, because that's ludicrous and nobody wants that. It's not helpful. And so what did he do? Lear made the mistake of going along with the people who flattered him and told him nice things. And look what happened, the tragedy of it. If you haven't read King Lear, I don't want to spoil it for people, but my goodness, you know, you should. And so I get upset about these distractions, this wasting people's time. If I had access to some of the resources these people have access to, like, I could have helped so many people. You know, there's so much talk and conversations, but no actual action to help somebody. Like, I don't know, why don't we do something? Okay, so we know what the problems are. Let's stop talking endlessly about them and having interesting conversations and having a dialogue. I want actions. Are your actions in alignment with the words that come out of your mouth? Because that's what I do. People always ask, like, they want to know if I listen to these shows or watch these channels that stream every single day or do daily shows on like Rumble and stuff. And I'm like, guys, I don't have time for that, first of all, because I actually do things every single day. I'm taking actions, you know. I don't have time to just talk and pontificate all day. I do it here to you guys sometimes, but it's like I'm actually doing things, so I don't have time to like do, you know. But anyways, this has gotten very rambling. I'm so sorry. I just, like, I needed to get this out, you know? I needed to say something, and I'm trying to be very tactful and professional. But I have integrity, and sometimes my integrity requires me to voice my opinion and say things that maybe other people are too scared to say. Oh, I might get ostracized. I might get alienated. I won't be invited into the club. I don't need to be in your club. I don't need to be. If you don't want me there, that's fine. Like, I am who I am, and the people who see my work and appreciate my work, and know the kind of person I am, value me, and those are the people I value. And I have been treated with more respect and kindness by, you know, some of the smallest channels that have had me on than some of the biggest. And that is very telling, and it says a lot, I think. And so, yeah, I feel like what they're doing is they've decided. So some of us have been saying for a long time, we've been talking about the economy. I don't like to brag or whatever, but I used to make economic predictions annually. I'd write articles predicting what I would think would happen in the next year or so. And I was always usually 2 years too early with my predictions. But a lot of the things that, like, are happening now, some of us warned about years ago, but nobody heard the warnings. And the same people who are still having conversations today are just starting to like realize these things. And it's just very fascinating, I think. But so I believe what's happening though is if you understand what a pressure release valve is, it's gotten to a point where they understand they no longer have the same control they had over the narrative and over the culture that they used to have. So now they're like, well, the cat's out of the bag in a way that, like, you just can't put the genie back in the bottle. People are angry. They know that. They know what they're doing to our country. They know what they're doing to the people, because they're doing it on purpose and it's by design. So of course they know people are going to be angry and upset about it. So they're going to give them the pressure release valve. The person who gets out there and speaks, that says the things that they want to say to an audience of millions. Okay, well, again, it's like you're just the pressure release valve of that system. You are the controlled opposition. And yes, this is a real phenomenon. It doesn't mean everybody out there that is successful is a controlled operator. A lot of these people that are gatekeepers or controlled opposition, they may not even knowingly be doing it. They do things like they self-censor in order to get clicks. They do what gets them the most money. And so by extension, they gatekeep, they control the conversation. They don't allow certain things to be discussed because they already know that if they allowed that, they lose their sponsorships or their ad deals, their advertisers. And so they toe a certain line and they set a tone, right, that is acceptable for conversations. And I think everybody is just done with that. We're done being told what the parameters are for things. Like, we're not going to stay inside the boxes you try to put us in. We're not going to sit here listening to you have conversations every single day about this, but while doing nothing to stop it or to help anybody that's been victimized by it. Some of these folks have spent millions of dollars on projects that no one asked for. Or really are, to be honest, distractions or fear-mongering about silly topics. Oh, let's make the topic of conversation about Transformers endlessly. Of course, Transformers is an issue, especially for parents, and it's a problem, but it's not to the extent that we need to dump millions of resources into talking about it and fear-mongering about it constantly over helping people who've been victimized by the federal government. Okay, but those are the priorities, and that's what it is. And yeah, this is my thoughts on it. It got a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, and there's probably more I have to say on this, but it's very real. The best way to control the opposition is to lead it. And look at some of these folks and ask yourself, how are they really in opposition to a system that is promoting them and allowing them to achieve worldly success? Because as Christians, we were told and promised suffering in this world if we followed that path. We're not promised worldly success. There's powers and principalities that control these offices of power, these seats of power. And so people, Satan offered Christ the world if he would just bow down at his feet and worship him. What does that tell you about who the God of this world is? Because Christ told us our reward is in the world to come. It isn't here. We should not be, as Christians, attached to worldly things and worldly success. That should not be our focus. If those things happen, that is a good thing, especially if you're following God's path and he wills that to happen to give you more resources to do his work and spread his word. But there are some people, they've achieved it by compromising themselves, by selling their soul piece by piece every single day. And I know exactly what's happening with YouTube. They don't want to pay people anymore. They're not going to give out ad revenue. They don't have it. YouTube hasn't really made money. It survives because Alphabet, its parent company, funds it, but they don't want to pay creators anymore. And so they're going to create a few approved voices, and then they're going to remove all your choices. They're going to remove all the small channels like mine. We're just going to go away. And it's okay, because we get very little support anyways. The people, that's what they want. They want the bread and circuses. I don't know what else to say. They want the entertainment, they want the distractions, and it seems like they just want to stay on the circus rides rather than getting off the ride and going and taking decisive actions to back up the things that you say. If you're the person you say you are and you care about the things that you claim to care about, I'd like to actually see that with your actions, not your fluffy words. Again, the people that this message was meant for, I hope they see it if you're listening and if you feel triggered by it, it probably wasn't meant for you. You know, we're talking about a very small people, like a group of people I'm talking about. Like I said, you realize that the people that are, you know, in these positions on our side, it's actually a very small group. It's a small clique of gatekeepers and controlled approved voices. I'm talking about that small, tiny percentage of people. Almost everybody else I've interacted with here is fantastic. And so I'm not talking about you. I love you guys. And of course, I love the audience. You guys are the reason that I continue to do this, and I continue to show up day after day, even though I feel like many times I'm shouting into an echo chamber and spending, you know, all of my time and resources on stuff that like hardly anybody will see. You guys see it, and the few people who do, like, you guys share my work and the messages you give me, like your appreciation of what I'm doing and understanding of what I'm trying to do, that means a lot to me. It means a lot to me when I talk to like the families of the men that I'm advocating for. Like, that's what I'm doing it for, to help those people who need help. And that's it. All right, bye everybody. Whee!